Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi welcomes United Arab Emirates President, highlights deep ties and shared vision for regional stability. The Lebanese President reaffirms his country's commitment to Syria's unity and territorial integrity. And Iran says it's ready to engage in fair and equitable negotiations regarding its nuclear program. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has welcomed United Arab Emirates President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan at Alamein Airport, marking the start of a multi-day visit to Egypt. President el-Sisi emphasized the deep-rooted ties and long-standing cooperation between Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, built on the legacy of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. The United Arab Emirates President expressed appreciation for the warm welcome and reaffirmed the strong relations between the two nations, highlighting their shared vision for regional stability and development. Egypt has strongly condemned the Israeli army's raid on Ramallah, which resulted in the injury of Palestinian civilians, calling it a dangerous escalation of ongoing Israeli violations in the West Bank. In a statement, the Egyptian Foreign Ministry denounced what it described as the Israeli government's aggressive and extremist policies, accusing them of destabilizing the region and undermining peace efforts. Egypt also warned of the serious consequences of Israelis' continued provocations and expansion of the conflict. Cairo renewed its call on the international community to take urgent measures to compel Israel to respect international law and humanitarian obligations in the occupied Palestinian territories. Egypt has strongly condemned Israel's attack on Nasser Medical Complex in Qnews, which killed and injured civilians, medical staff and journalists, calling it another blatant violation of international humanitarian law. In a foreign ministry statement, Egypt decried Israel's deliberate targeting of journalists and humanitarian workers and also denounced what it described as acts of genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. Egypt urged the United Nations Security Council and the international community to act decisively to end Israel's war on Gaza and protect civilians. Following the arrest of the head of the Union of Egyptian Youth Abroad, Ahmed Abdel Qadir, by London security authorities, a wave of condemnations and solidarity has emerged from Egyptian political, partisan and human rights circles, as well as on social media. Supporters view his arrest as a targeted action against a nationalist youth figure who has previously challenged attempts by the Muslim Brotherhood to attack Egyptian embassies. Many condemn the arrest as a violation of his rights and a bias toward the Muslim Brotherhood, stressing that Abdel Qadir was simply defending his country's diplomatic missions. Legal and political figures have called for his immediate release, arguing that he was upholding international law while the true aggressors, the attackers on the embassies, remain unpunished. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdel-Ati has expressed deep concern to a British official about the arrest of Egypt's citizen Ahmed Abdel Qadir in London. That came during his call with UK National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell, where Abdel-Ati requested an immediate explanation for the circumstances and reasons behind the arrest. The Egyptian foreign minister emphasized Egypt's desire for prompt access to the investigation results and Abdel-Qadir's swift release. Furthermore, Abdel-Ati has instructed the Egyptian embassy in London to communicate with the relevant British authorities, provide full consular services, and work towards securing the citizens' quick release. For more analysis, we now move on to Salma Al-Fay in our newsroom. Salma.
Thank you, Rana. And for further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by the journalist and researcher, Mr. Ihab Omar. Welcome to Qnews, sir. Sir, how does the international law address the arrest of a foreign citizen abroad in cases linked to political activism or defending national interests?
Greetings to you and to your audience, and thank you for having me. Britain, what was committed by Britain is unlawful and contradicts with the international law, and it opposes the right to for one to express himself. What we see in Britain now is a violation of the international laws and regulations that protect the freedom of speech. They only have the right to detain him if he committed a violation to a certain law, be it a penal or civil law, but his detaining has been condemned by NGOs, and it was done all in the light to serve the British agenda. But the Egyptian patriotic youngsters who oppose the attempts done by the Muslim Brotherhood to tarnish Egypt, they do so fueled by their love of the country, and in the pretext of democracy, their right must be defended. And we all know the relationship, the ongoing relationship between the international Muslim Brotherhood, the International Committee of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the regime in Britain.
Mr. Omar, could Ahmed Abdel-Qadir's previous actions protecting the Egyptian embassies influence maybe the legal or political assessment of his arrest in the UK?
Truthfully speaking, the Egyptian embassy in the UK is considered under the international law a foreign piece of land. Ahmed Abdel-Qadir was defending his own embassy. We in Egypt highly respect and look in high regard to the diplomatic missions, and what we saw today in Britain and yesterday, we saw a group of Egyptian patriots trying to defend their embassy.
Yeah.
They did so because the police in Britain failed to perform their duty to protect the Egyptian embassy inside the UK.
Sir, can we ask you what are the diplomatic obligations of the UK towards Egypt in such a case, and how might London respond to Egypt's calls for consular access and explanation?
Egypt moved hastily and at God's speed to protect its citizen. It is not something new. In 2020, Egypt also moved to protect some Egyptians. So the Egyptian state is always attentive to the Egyptians abroad. And we tried to contact the National Security Counselor in Britain to know the reasons, and we think that an advocate affiliated with the Egyptian embassy will be present to defend Ahmed and to see in which legal frames was Ahmed apprehended.
Yes.
Egypt holds full right to defend him before all British courts.
Okay, let me move and ask you, sir, if you can share with us and explain what role do the human rights considerations play when a country like Egypt demands the immediate release of a citizen detained abroad?
I too ask the same. To Human Rights Watch, I direct my question, and Amnesty International and other NGOs and the Freedom House organization. All those would release statements of disapproval when an innocent man is apprehended, but they didn't do so when Ahmed Abdul Qadir was apprehended. And I wanted the civil NGOs to do that. So this situation show clear that these organizations move. They have a political agenda of their own. If the one apprehended is a terrorist or affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood, they would go and disapprove his detainment, and they will start talking about his human rights. But when an innocent man is detained, they fail to show he didn't commit a crime. He is just a patriot. How is this democratic? And it is a violation of human rights for Ahmed to be detained.
Sir, do you think, in your opinion, could this arrest impact the UK-Egypt relations? And what channels are typically used to maybe resolve such disputes diplomatically?
Egypt maintains its level of relation with other key states and will not permit such actions to deter the relationships with other powers like the UK and the US. But at the same time, we will not sacrifice Ahmed's freedom at the altar of diplomatic relations. We will keep it balanced. Also, we will move within all our power. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs will move to protect its citizens living abroad.
Would you consider this arrest to be interpreted as a biased action favoring groups like the Muslim Brotherhood over actually Egypt's national interest?
Yes, of course. The beneficiary number one is the Muslim Brotherhood, the terrorist entity called the Muslim Brotherhood. They are the ones trying to barricade the Egyptian embassies abroad. They are the one locking these embassies.
Okay.
And I don't know why the police in Britain is moving against the patriots who unintentionally gathered to defend their embassies, to prevent the members of the Muslim Brotherhood to be in a close proximity to the embassies abroad. Those affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood can freely move throughout Britain and the EU, but we cannot permit them to promote anti-security in the proximity of the embassy.
And that was Mr. Ihab Omar from Cairo, the journalist and researcher. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on Q News here tonight. And now we go back to Rana Al-Assas in our studio. Rana.
Thank you so much, Salma. And now we move on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has reaffirmed his country's commitment to Syria's unity and territorial integrity. That came during a meeting with a U.S. delegation in Beirut, where he expressed satisfaction with Syria's readiness to build strong relations with Lebanon, describing it as a mutual desire. Aoun reiterated Lebanon's readiness to immediately address unresolved bilateral issues in a spirit of brotherhood, cooperation, and good neighborhoodliness, emphasizing the historical ties between both countries. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has affirmed that the process of disarming all non-state actors and establishing the government's full authority over war and peace has begun and is irreversible. Salam told the visiting U.S. delegation that Lebanon is committed to the American envoy's proposal with some modifications. He stressed that the disarmament of militias must coincide with reciprocal steps from Israel. He also announced that the Lebanese army would present a plan for exclusive state control of all weaponry next week. U.S. envoy Tom Barak has announced that the United States will back a one-year extension of the United Nations interim force in Lebanon, UNIFIL mandate, which expired this Sunday. Speaking from Lebanon's presidential palace, Barak noted that the peacekeeping forces' annual cost of around $1 billion, signaling concerns over its expense. The UN Security Council is considering a French-drafted compromise to keep UNIFIL deployed for another year while planning its eventual withdrawal. The draft emphasizes transitioning full security responsibilities to the Lebanese government. A planned vote faced opposition from the US and Israel has begun and been postponed as negotiations continue.
You're in a worse dilemma
Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara has stated that any peace with Israel is contingent upon the return of the occupied Syrian Golan Heights and full adherence to the 1974 disengagement agreement. He emphasized that Syria would not consider a peace deal otherwise. Al-Shara also addressed domestic issues, dismissing calls for separation as dreams and asserting that Syria's unity is supported by both its people and international consensus. He noted that all initial disputes, including those in Kurdish and Swaida region, are negotiable except for secession. Syria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has strongly condemned Israeli forces for their incursion and arrest campaign in Al-Qunaytira countryside. The Syrian Foreign Ministry also denounced Israel's continued illegal presence in Jabal el-Sheikh. That came as Syria declared that these aggressive practices are a blatant violation of international law and a direct assault on the nation's sovereignty, demanding an end to all such hostile actions. Jordan's foreign ministry has strongly condemned Israel's ongoing violations of Syrian sovereignty. A ministry spokesperson highlighted a recent Israeli incursion and an attack on a Syrian home, which killed a civilian. Jordan views Israel's continued presence as a flagrant breach of international law and the 1974 disengagement agreement. The Jordan ministry urged the international community to hold Israel accountable and to stop its aggressive actions against Syria, emphasizing that Syria's security is vital for regional stability.
We're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death.
A new round of nuclear negotiations between Iran, the EU and the European Turkey has begun in Geneva. These talks are at a critical juncture, taking place just before the EU's deadline to potentially trigger a snapback mechanism on sanctions. The second round of discussions following a previous meeting in Istanbul will determine the future of Iran-EU relations in the direction of the nuclear file. The talks are seen as a last-ditch effort to achieve a diplomatic solution and de-escalate regional tensions. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has stated that his country is ready to engage in fair and equitable negotiations regarding its nuclear program. Araghchi emphasized, however, that the resumption of indirect talks with the United States is conditional. According to Araghchi, building trust is a necessary prerequisite for these discussions to move forward. This stance highlights Iran's stance on the need for a stable and trustworthy foundation before rearranging informal diplomatic talks with the United States. Iran has condemned Australia's decision to expel its ambassador, denying involvement in anti-Jewish attacks and warning of reciprocal diplomatic action. Iranian Foreign Minister spokesperson called Australia's accusations inappropriate and unjustified, suggesting the move was influenced by recent large pro-Palestine protests in Australia and aimed at balancing criticism of Israel.
والله العظيم ولا حبة رز، والله العظيم ولا حبة عدس. ما فيش أكل، ما فيش شرب، عندي بنت سنتين ونص صارت تشرب.
At least 24 Palestinians were wounded by Israeli gunfire during a raid in Ramallah and Al-Bira in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society reported medical teams faced repeated obstacles, with Israeli forces firing warning shots at ambulances. Israeli troops stormed the area for several hours, raiding a money exchange office and arresting employees. CCTV footage showed soldiers throwing a smoke grenade into a hair salon, sheltering civilians. Additionally, reinforcements and snipers were deployed, while separate reports confirmed a military operation in Al Khalil, including low road closures near the city center. Gaza's health ministry has issued an urgent warning about a severe and dangerous shortage of blood supplies in hospitals, citing Israel's blockade and ongoing conflict. The ministry says over 350 units are needed daily, but traditional donation sources and dwindling due to famine and malnutrition. It called on all concerned parties to act immediately to prevent further loss of life. Gaza-based health authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has climbed to over 62,800 and over 158,600 were wounded. Gaza-based health authorities have reported that Israeli military operations in Gaza had killed 75 Palestinians and injured 370 others in the past 24 hours. The Gaza Ministry of Health has reported that 17 were dead and 122 wounded as a result of the Israeli bombing of 8 centers in the last 24 hours. It also reported that the number of victims from the bombing of 8 centers had risen to more than 2,100 deaths and more than 15,700 wounded. UN Secretary General has strongly condemned the killing of Palestinians, including medical personnel and journalists, in Israeli strikes on Nasser hospitals in Gaza's Khan Yunis. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric extended condolences to families of journalists killed, including those from the Associated Press, Reuters, and Al Jazeera. He stressed the importance of protecting civilians, medical staff, and journalists during the conflict and called for a prompt, impartial investigation. Responding to a question about the new Israeli offensive on the Gaza city, Dujarric urged an immediate halt, highlighting the extreme dangers for Palestinians in the area and the need for a ceasefire, humanitarian aid access, and detainee release.
He reiterates that medical personnel and journalists must be able to perform their essential duties without interference, without intimidation, and without harm, and in full accordance.
The European Commission has condemned the Israeli strike on the Nasser hospital in Gaza on August the 25th, which killed at least 20 people, including 5 journalists and 4 health workers. Spokesperson Anwar El-Anouni called the attack completely unacceptable, emphasizing that civilians and journalists must be protected under international law. He urged Israel to respect humanitarian law and investigate the incident, highlighting the urgent need to end the ongoing suffering and violence in Gaza.
We reiterate our call on Israel.
That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi welcomes United Arab Emirates President, highlights deep ties and shared vision for regional stability. The Lebanese president reaffirms his country's commitment to Syria's unity and territorial integrity. And Iran says it's ready to engage in fair and equitable negotiations regarding its nuclear program. This condemns our news bulletin for this hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching, and this ends our transmission for today. Until we meet again tomorrow at 4 p.m. local time, it's goodbye.